Moving on now, in 2020, Biden campaigned as a leader who could unite America, a leader who could bring the polarized nation together. But a year later, the United States still remains divided. It has been a year since the U.S. Capitol witnessed its worst riots in history, an attack on the American democracy. Outside the Capitol last year, Biden's inaugural address was focused on healing. Now, Joe Biden left the rhetoric blaming former President Donald Trump for the chaos and carnage at the Capitol last year.
Mr. President, how are you feeling about the day, sir?
For the first time in our history, a president had not just lost an election, he tried to prevent the peaceful transfer of power as a violent mob breached the Capitol. But they failed. They failed. And on this day of remembrance, we must make sure that such attack never happens again. And here's the truth. The former President of the United States of America has created and spread a web of lies about the 2020 election. He's done so because he values power over principle, because he sees his own interest as more important than his country's interest, than America's interest.
The U.S. president did not seem to mince his words. He went after Trump and his supporters, slamming them for questioning the legitimacy of the elections. He also endorsed national efforts to enact election reform, a move that Biden says will counter any attempt to undermine voting rights.
This wasn't a group of tourists. This was an armed insurrection. They weren't looking to uphold the will of the people. They were looking to deny the will of the people. They weren't looking to uphold a free and fair election. They were looking to overturn one. They were looking to save the cause of America. They were looking to subvert the Constitution. And so at this moment, we must decide, what kind of nation are we going to be? Are we going to be a nation that accepts political violence as a norm? Are we going to be a nation where we allow partisan election officials to overturn the legally expressed will of the people? Are we going to be a nation that lives not by the light of the truth, but in the shadow of lies? We cannot allow ourselves to be that kind of nation. The way forward is to recognize the truth and to live by it.
Now, Joe Biden did not deliberately mention Trump's name, but he made it clear who he was talking about. While the world was listening to every word of Joe Biden, someone who was paying extra attention was the former president himself, Donald Trump. Donald Trump responded to the speech by releasing an angry statement accusing Biden of destroying the nation. Trump was quick to fire back. He released a couple of statements doubling down on his own lies about the election. Trump dismissed Biden's speech as a political theater. Trump has also planned to launch his social media application called Truth Social. The app will be launched on the 21st of February. This would be similar to Twitter. It would offer features to follow other people and trending topics. The launch comes 13 months after Facebook and Twitter banned Trump for encouraging his supporters to participate in the insurrection. Meanwhile, back at the Capitol Hill, House Speaker Nancy Pelosi and other Democrats held a candlelight vigil on the steps of the Capitol Hill. They prayed for the police officers who lost their lives during the insurrection. Lawmakers also sang "God Bless America."
Is of thee, liberty of thee I sing. God bless America, land that I love. Stand beside her and guide her.
And WION correspondent Nick Harper sent us this report from Washington, D.C. Let's listen in.
1 year ago today, I was here on this spot just a few meters from where we are again today, and the scene was very, very different. But we're still seeing what we saw a year ago, those very deep divisions that are within the country, as highlighted, as you mentioned, by the two very different responses of these two leaders. President Biden saying that his predecessor bore sole responsibility for what happened 12 months ago, that his lies that he's continuing to propagate are continuing to put democracy under threat. But at the same time, you've got the former president, Donald Trump, putting out that statement saying that he still thinks that he won the election, and that President Biden has only been making these speeches to try and deflect attention away from himself. President Trump saying that President Biden is doing a terrible job at running the country. Those divisions still run very deep in the country, and this idea that democracy is an unstable being is very much real and present today. Polls out over the last few days suggest that there are a large proportion of Americans who don't believe last year's election was free and fair, that the November 2020 presidential election was won by Donald Trump. 70% of Republicans feel that it was falsely stolen from him, and 30% of all Americans, Democrats and Republicans, don't believe that it was a legitimate election. So those divisions, that partisan divide, was very clear 12 months ago. It was on display at the Capitol, but it's still very much on display 12 months on.
WION is now available in your country. Download the app now. Get all the news on the move.